the most important thing about us is what we believe about God.
Yes.
And I believe that. Man, I love that story you referenced. That it's one of my life verses, the baptism of Jesus into the wilderness. I mean, and it's literally like one sentence later, he's baptized. This is my beloved son. And a sentence later, he's in the wilderness, and the enemy says, "If you are the Son of God," and all of the enemy's attacks are over our belovedness. And
Wow.
so, what Jesus, I think, for those 40 days had been feasting on, I'm the beloved. I'm the beloved. I am the beloved. So when the counterfeit was slid across the table, Jesus is like, no, it is written. This is who I am. This isn't just words I've read or a voice I've heard. This is something written on my heart. I know this to be true. He is my Father. I am his son. And that's David on the battlefield. He's like, who are you to defile the army of the living God? I have a prophecy and I have a Father that has a dream and a plan for me. Like, you can't take me out. That's where his confidence was rooted in who God was for him. So for me, that quote from A.W. Tozer is probably one of the core pillars that we built a lot of our discipleship curriculum on, is like what we believe about God is the most important thing about us. And how that would play out for me just in my own journey is, if I see God to be a grumpy taskmaster, a God, I know one of the lies that I've had to tear down from my thoughts is I saw God for a lot of years like an Olympic judge. And he's just up there grading my quiet times. He's grading, you got like a 8.7 today. You kind of read the Bible, but not really. And you did this. And instead of a Father like in the stands, like cheering me on, and he's going to go home and practice with me later tonight and stay out late throwing catch. And he's going to be with me at practice the next day. But I saw him for so many years as this perfectionist taskmaster you don't quite have what it takes. And to have that lie, Paul says, take captive every thought that has exalted itself above the knowledge of God. And there was these lies that, like Goliath, sat above who God actually was in my mind and in my heart. And so my discipleship journey has been those lies, learning how to take those captive and replace them with, actually, this is who God is. Because I believe that the God we see is the man that will be. The God we see is the man will be. So if we see God as this perfectionist, angry, grumpy taskmaster, we'll reflect it. And I can look back at the way I parented my kids in the early part of their age, and it actually breaks my heart. Because I can see where I reflected that kind of father to my kids. I mean, I'll never forget this one moment. My daughter's unloading the dishwasher. My daughter Haven. She's the most peaceful heart. She's like 4 or 5 years old, unloading the dishwasher, and she pulls a glass out and drops it on the floor and breaks it. And my first reaction was, it wasn't anger like I hit her, but frustration came out of my heart, and not patience, not kindness. But I reacted to her mistake instead of responding to her mistake. And it was a sharp judgment. And I just remember watching her little spirit crumble. And I realized I just reacted to Haven the way that I believe God reacts to my mistakes.
Wow.
And until I learn to be kind to myself, I'm going to keep parenting my kids like this, where I'm going to parent them from my perfectionism. And so it sent me it broke my heart. But that's usually the place where transformation starts happening. And I'm like, God, I believe that's how you respond to my mistakes. Like, earlier this week when I didn't feel like I measured up in these places, I saw you up there in the stands going, nah, not quite. One day you'll get it. Instead of like a father who's full of kindness towards me. And so as I begin to replace that lie with the true picture of he's a God who's slow to anger and he's quick to love, I've learned to be kind to myself which I'm now reflecting much more kindness to my son and daughter, much more kindness to my wife, much more kindness to those around me. So if we see God to be generous, we'll reflect generosity. If we see God to be joyful, we'll reflect joyful. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think the process of being able to literally meditate on who God is and spending time hearing his voice and spending time because when I think about how do you go from having this view of Father God being upset and impatient, angry, and then this other view of I'm not enough, I don't do things well enough, I'm not I'm not pleasing to him. We have to carve out some real time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only way, is you have to carve out, unless you have a better idea, but it feels like you have to carve out some real time in your life.
Yep.
In your everyday life to get really present with God.
Yep.
In the midst of your successes and your failures.